Hello there, I'm Thundaga and welcome to my How to Make a Pokemon Game tutorial series. This series will cover all of the essential info that you need to make a Pokemon game in RPG Maker and Pokemon Essentials. In this episode, we'll be looking at how to set up our region map. First, we'll cover how to make a map image for our new region. After that, we'll cover how to change the metadata to display our map in-game. Next, we'll look at the different ways that we can add map location names. Along the way, we'll also look at how we can set up fly locations for the towns on our map. After that, we'll touch on how to set up hidden map locations that don't show up on the map until they're discovered. And lastly, we'll test it all out in-game. With all that said, let's get into it. Now the first thing that we need to do is make an image for our region map. The region map images live inside of the Graphics, UI, and then if we scroll down, in the Town Map folder. We can see some things in here, such as Map Region 0 and Map Region 1. We can also see the map background and some other things like icons for the cursor, the fly, and player head icons. There are also some hidden island graphics here, which we'll cover later in this tutorial. For now though, what we care about the most is the map region graphic. Let's copy an existing one and then paste it, and let's rename it to be Map Region 2, which will be our new region. Now let's open our image editing software of choice and get to work on making a new region map. My software of choice is Photoshop, but you can do this in any other image editor you want, like Paint.net or GIMP or Microsoft Paint or anything else. I've made a new empty layer here, and then I'm gonna hide the old map, and now we can get started on making our new region map. The first thing that you should know though is that each tile on the map is a 16 by 16 pixel square. The map image itself is 480 by 320 pixels, which means that this is a 30 tile by 20 tile map. If you can, in your image editing software, I would recommend enabling a grid view for 16 by 16 squares, since this will help visualize things. Now from here, we could draw whatever we want for our map. We could draw ocean like this, and then if we wanted to, we could go in and get some green and have that be the grass. And then I could fill it in like this and have that be the land. This isn't gonna look super great though, because right now I'm just kind of hand drawing things. But in theory, we could do something like this. And then I could draw like, oh, this is a town. I mean, that kind of looks like crap. But you know, like, oh, this is a town, and then here's a route, and so on and so forth. We could hand draw things, but what if I told you that there was another way to do this? I personally really like the Heart Gold and Soul Silver style of maps. So what we could do is use some existing Heart Gold and Soul Silver assets taken from the Spiders resource, which is a great reference, by the way. This particular image has a ton of assets that we can use for towns and routes and trees and caves and so much more that we can take for our map. The link to this will be in the video description. One thing that's important to note though, this download came in with a pixel density of 1, so all of these are a 1 by 1 square. But for our map, we want it to be a pixel density of 2. So really quick, I need to go in and double this image size. And then once I've done that, I can actually take all these and copy and paste them into our other map. So real quick, I'm gonna take this and double it. So instead of 746, it's 1492. And I need to make sure that the resampling is set to nearest neighbor, so that way it'll still look like sharp pixel art. Now we hit OK on this. And now we've doubled this in size. So now all of these that were 1 by 1 pixel density are now 2 by 2. So in theory, what we could do is we could take this town here, copy it, go back to our map and paste it in, and now we can see that it kind of fits in with our 16 by 16 grid, at least when we center it on a tile like so. What we should also do is go in and get rid of these little dark corners here, and there we go, we've got ourselves a town on our map. If we wanted to, we could always recolor this as well. Like, for example, what if you don't like it when the towns are red, and for your game, maybe you'd prefer that these are all blue. What we could do is copy this and kind of get a similar shade of blue. I could do the same here, copy that, get another similar shade of blue, and then lastly go in and copy that, get another similar shade of blue. See, there we go. That's a kind of sloppy way to do it, but this would be how you could make like a blue town. You could copy this, paste that over there, and then maybe have this be like a yellow town or whatever. This is where you can get the most creative. You're free to take any liberties you want for whatever style works best for your game. I'm interested in maybe doing some hand-drawn stuff personally, but that's just because I have a weird art style and I want to just draw my own stuff. But I think it's also really fun to be able to take and look at some of these existing assets and then start throwing them on your town map. For example, I also really like the trees. What we could do is copy one of these trees, paste it in here, And then let's go and remove the dark border around it. And now what we can do is start placing trees around our map. Like, look at that. We can surround all of these with trees. What I'm doing in Photoshop here is I'm holding Alt and clicking and dragging, and that allows you to make a duplicate as a new layer. Right now my layers are extremely unorganized by doing this, so I'll have to go in and organize them later. But just to help look at things, it's like, oh look, we got 2 towns here surrounded by trees. Let me take this one and move it a little bit over. And then let me take this other tree and move that up a little bit. What we can do now is start fleshing this out a little bit more. So what I'll do is I'll cut away and I'll show you my map once I've worked on it a little bit more. All right, here's my map. It's not great and there's probably too many trees, but this will be a good starting point for our region layout. In the bottom left here is our test town, and then we have Route 1 and then Route 2 with our cave, and then the yellow square here will be Helio Town. I started getting lazy and just made the rest of the towns all red, but I kinda dig this layout. Now, let's save this map as map-region2.png and then start working with it in our game. And just for reference, here's how map region 2 looks fully exported. Compared that to map region 1 and map region 0, I kinda like how our map region 2 looks. It's kinda got a unique style to it. Now, the first thing that we need to do is define our new region map in our game. And the way we can do that is in the PBS files. Inside of the town map PBS file, we can see that Region 0 and Region 1 are defined in here. Region 0 is named Essen and uses map-region0.png, and map region 1 is named Teal and uses map-region1.png. I like how these region names are Essen and Teal, and when combined it's essential, you know, for Pokemon Essentials. You'll notice that there are also a lot of points defined in here for Region 0, which we'll cover in just a little bit. These determine what information corresponds to each map tile, though, for reference. To add our new region to the game, what we can do is just copy some of this right now, go down and paste it, and instead let's make this region 2. Now let's come up with a cool name for it. How about something like Tutori, because this is for our tutorials. Then let's also make sure it properly loads map-region2.png, and then we can delete this extra point here. Now all we gotta do is save this, and now we have everything set to start seeing our map data in-game. What we need to do now is start filling in the rest of our map information, so let's do that next. The way that we can do that is actually by running the game in debug mode, so let's run it and hold left control to ensure our PBS changes are compiled. With our PBS changes made and compiled, the map should now be selectable if we go into debug mode. So let's go in, and let's go into PBS file editors. Now let's go and edit our map metadata, and let's make it so Helio Town Poke Center is in the Tutori region. What we can do now is we can scroll down a little bit and we can start setting up the map position. What this will do is it will set our Poke Center to be in that region. So let's hit enter on this and choose a region map. We can see now from the list here that Tutori is selectable because we added it in our PBS. Let's select the Tutori region. And now what we can do is we can left click on a point in this map to set where our Tutori Poke Center is. I said it earlier, but Helio Town should be this yellow square here, so let's left click on that. Now we can see that the map position has been set. Now, if we open the town map while standing here, it will know that we're standing in a Tutori region map and open the corresponding Tutori region map image and all the data and such. Just to break down these numbers, map position has these 3 here. We can see that 2, that's the map ID, and we know that Tutori is the second region map, so that's ID 2, and then these are the X and Y coordinates, 12 and 14. Now let's back out of this and save our changes, and now let's go interact with the map up here. When we open it, it should know that we're in the Tutori region. There we go, we have now reached our map. Doesn't that look great in-game? My player's head is kind of overlapped by that red square here, but whatever. Look, we can move around the Tutori region map. It's a little bit of a pain, but we'll need to do this setting of the map position for every single new map that we make. But at least we can go through them one at a time and we can left click on each of these tiles, so yeah. But it is a process, it's something to be aware of. Now that we've got our map appearing in-game, let's fill out all the point information so that the names of locations will appear as we pan around points on the map. There are 3 methods that we can do to add these points. The first method, which is probably the hardest and most complicated, is to manually type everything out in the PBS. I'd recommend against this unless you're an expert in keeping track of all the map tile numbers. There are some easier ways to do this, which we'll cover next. The way these points are set up, though, is in the following format. Point equals, and then the map X coordinate, the map Y coordinate, the primary name we want to show for the map, the secondary name we'd want to show for the map, like for a point of interest, then the map ID for flying, and then the X coordinate for flying, and the Y coordinate for flying. And lastly, after that, can be a switch number, such as these hidden maps here, Birth and Faraday Island, a switch number that determines if the map can even be seen on the map or flown to. For most maps though, we only care about the map coordinates and the primary name. For things like towns though, we do care about the fly location stuff. We'll showcase that more later in the tutorial though. So if we wanted to, we could copy one of these points, like this one here for Lappet Town Oaks Lab, and paste it into our map, and then begin modifying it. So for example, point 1312, and instead of calling it Lappet Town, we could call it Test Town, and then instead of Oaks Lab, this could be Test Lab. I'm probably getting these coordinates wrong, but let's just play along for now. In RPG Maker, if we go and check our test town and check the coordinates here in the bottom right, we can see that it's map ID 22, and then the space in front of our house is 2014. So when we fly to test town, what we should do is we should go to map 22 and then coordinates 2014 to be in front of our house. So like I said earlier, this is probably not the correct coordinates on the map because it's kind of hard to visualize just going through the PBS. Thankfully, there are some better tools that we can use to help us visualize where on the map they are. One of those ways is Method 2, which is the HTML tool that comes with Pokémon Essentials. This is the Town Map Gen HTML tool in the root folder. As a heads up though, before we start using it, an updated version came with the hotfixes patch, so be sure first to go into Plugins, v21.1 hotfixes, and copy this Town Map Gen here. This is the updated one. Click Let's Go, copy it, then go back into our root folder and paste to replace, to make sure we're using the most up-to-date version. With that done, we can just double click it to run it and open a window in our browser. With this open, we can now use this tool to start generating the PBS data that we can then copy and paste into our town map PBS file. At the top, we can set the file name and region name. So let's make sure we do map region 2, and let's call it the Tutori region. Then hit change to apply the changes to the tool. As you can see, it loaded in our proper map image now. What we can do next is we can mouse over various points on the map and then left click them to select them and begin adding data to those points. So for example, I clicked on the yellow town here, which we know is Helio Town. So let's type that in as Helio Town. Right now, it doesn't have any landmark, so that's the subname I mentioned earlier, so let's just leave that blank. Next, for our fly destination. If we check in RPG Maker, we can see that Helio Town is map ID 78, and then the space in front of the Pokemon Center is coordinate 1014. So that would mean the fly destination is 78, 10, 14. And then lastly, it doesn't need a switch to be visible on the map and flown to, so we can just leave this switch field blank. Now let's just hit save, and we can see here now in the bottom, it's printed out points data for Helio Town. We can do this now also for our test town. If we click on the blue square here, that's where our test town should be. So let's type in test town, if I could spell it properly. And then for the landmark, let's add test lab. As we defined before, we can remember that the fly destination for test town is 22, 20, 14. Let's go in and save this. And as we can see, it has now created another point here in our PBS data. If we wanted to, we could do this for every single point on the map here now. We could do it for Route 1 and Route 2, so on and so forth. But right now, let's just go ahead and copy what we've got so far and test it out in game. I'm gonna copy these points, and then I'm gonna go in to the PBS and paste what we've got. Now let's save and go back to RPG Maker and run our game while holding left control to compile all these changes and see how everything looks in game now. Alright, I'm now in the Pokemon Center. Let's go and interact with the map. Ooh, look, we can see that when we highlight this particular square, it says Helio Town. If we go over here now, it'll say Test Town with Test Lab as the landmark. That looks great. Right on. So right now we've started filling in some data, but what if I told you there's an even easier way to fill in map data? It's something that you can actually do while in game. If you are playing in debug mode, which you are by default when you run it through RPG Maker, if you go open up the map, and select a point and hit enter on the map, then you can start typing in this data directly into the PBS. This is my preferred method. This is method 3. Let's call this tile Route 1. Let's call this tile Route 1 as well. Then this can be Route 2. This can also be Route 2. And I believe we called this map, what, Dim Cave, Dark Cave? I forget. Let's just call it Dark Cave for now. There we go. So this is my preferred method of doing it. You can go through and really quickly hit enter on each of these. Like, for example, this will probably be Route 3. And you can start naming everything so fast. Like, we'll call this, like, Town 3, so on and so forth. This is the quick and dirty way to do it. And then what we can do now is if we hit back and close this and save our changes, if we close our game now, and if we open up our PBS, we'll say, hey, some changes have been made. Do you want to load those? Yes. We can start seeing that a lot of the point data was already printed out into the PBS. And then what we can do is start adding more data after that. Like I said earlier, there are 3 things that we care about the most, and that's those 2 coordinates and then the map's name. And then as we see fit, we can go in and add more data. For example, if we wanted you to be able to fly to a certain map, then we could do something like this, where it doesn't have a landmark, but then it has fly coordinates, so on and so forth. That's my favorite way, method 3. It's just debug, you press enter on the map, and you start typing in the names. It's pretty awesome. Now that we've got the ability to add map point information to our region map and set up fly points, let's now cover how to actually fly and use them. First things first, in the scripts, around line 178 of the settings script is a badge for fly setting here. This determines which badge ID you need to be able to fly. By default, this is badge ID 5. Above that though is a setting which determines if the badge count is required or if a specific badge is required. If this is true, then you need 5 badges to be able to use fly. But if it's false, then you just need 1 badge of ID number 5 to be able to use fly. If you don't care about this at all though, and you just want to be able to use fly all the time, then make sure that this is set to true, and then go down and set the badge for fly to 0. This way, even if the player has 0 badges, they can still use fly. As a heads up though, if you're playing in debug mode, as is default when running from RPG Maker, then you'll always be able to fly no matter what. So be sure to also test this out by running your game.exe to properly match the player experience. Next, a couple other conditions need to be true before you can fly to a location. First, you need to have a Pokemon in your party that knows the move fly. Second, you need to be standing on an outdoor map. You can't fly from an inside map. And 3, you need to have visited that fly map ID once before. You cannot fly to a map that you've never visited before. And this is also true for map points that are hidden with switches. If all of those conditions are correct though, you should be able to fly. What I've done here is I've debugged given myself a Pidgeotto that has the move fly. And I've made it so that way 0 badges are required, we're standing outside, and let's fly to a place we've visited before. Right now we could fly to Heliotown, which is where we currently are, but let's fly to Test Town, and we can see there it's got the test lab as well. Since we've already been to Test Town, we should be able to fly there, and look, it took us here to the spot that we specified in front of our house. Yay, looks like fly is working. And now just to show it off, let's go back into our Pokemon. Actually, let me show you something really cool. If you press, I believe, the D key, you can pull up your HMs here for like a quick access, and I can just select fly from there. That's pretty fast. Now let's go back to Heliotown. There's also another way that you can fly fast that I'll show you, which is also kind of fun. If we debug, give ourselves a town map, let me grab myself one here, then what we can do is either select it directly from here, or we can go bag and then use the town map. Then, from here, what we can do is if we press the Z key, you can see in the top right action fly, the action key is Z. If we press Z, what we will do is we will enter or exit fly mode. So if I press Z, I have exited fly mode, press Z again, now I've entered fly mode. And once you're in fly mode from the town map, what you can do is just select a map and fly to it directly. This way you don't have to go and select your Pokemon and then select fly. You can just fly from the town map. I think that's pretty dang convenient, and I'll show you where that setting exists in the scripts. In the settings script, around line 264 is a setting here called can fly from town map, and this is default to true. If you want, you could set it to false, so that way you cannot fly using the town map, but I think it's kind of cool if you have it. This will allow you to fly if all the other conditions are true. As you can see here, around this area of the script is also where it's defining what's called the region map extras, or some of the hidden parts of the map. So I think this is now a great time for us to talk about how to set up hidden map tiles, or hidden areas on the map. Everything is described above here in the script itself, but as a quick rundown, for each area here we define the following. There's the region number, then the switch number, which will determine if we show this graphic if it's on, then the X and Y coordinates of this graphic on the map, then the name of the graphic, for example, hidden_birth here for Birth Island, and then a true or false bool at the end here to determine if the graphic is always shown on wall maps or never shown. This is defaulted to false. So for our game, let's now make a new example for a hidden map area here. I made a new graphic here called hidden_test for a place that we can call Test Island. How about we place our test island here on the map, in the ocean at coordinates 21, 17. There is an important thing that you need to consider about the image layout though. Since our island is larger than the 16 by 16 tiles on the map, and the image when placed on the map is top left aligned, it will extend to the right and down. If you want an island like this, you actually need to go up one tile and left one tile from where your central focus on the island would actually be. If the center of our island here we want to be that 16 by 16 square, and if this is going to be on coordinate 21, 17, then if we go up and we go left, then this is really coordinate 2016 here. In general, it's a good idea to surround our central 16 by 16 tile with a grid of other 16 by 16 tiles, so this is actually a 48 by 48 image. I think this will make more sense as we demo this, but in general, a good rule of thumb is to always remember those 16 by 16 squares that the map uses. That's very important to consider. So if the center we want to be 21, 17, and we know the image is top left aligned, then that would make this tile up here 20, 16, so let's put that in our scripts. Let's define our map like this. We got to do a comma here and then some brackets for a new entry in this array. We know we're in region 2. I've made a switch for switch 60, which I'll show you in a little bit. And then we remembered that instead of 21, 17, we need to be up one and left one, so that'll be 20, 16. Now let's put in the name of that file, which we know is hidden_test. And then let's just follow suit with all these others and do comma false at the end because that's the default. Now let's apply this, and we're done with the scripting portion here. I mentioned it earlier, but I made an NPC here in Heliotown that when you talk to them, they just turn switch 60 on and off. And switch 60 right here is just called show test map. Now the last thing that we should do is add an entry in our town map for a point for our test island. What we can do is we can actually just copy some of the existing stuff here, like for Faraday Island. We can go down to our region 2, and we know that it's 2117, that will be where the center of our island is. We can call it Test Island, and let's make it connected to switch 60 here. Bada boom! If we ever wanted to fly to this island, then what we would need to do is add the map ID and the coordinates, but I haven't made this island just yet. It's on my to-do list. With our PBS set and our script changes made, I think we're all ready to test this in-game. Alright, here we are in-game. If I open up the town map and I go down here to around 2117, we'll see there's nothing there. That's because switch 60 is off right now. Now let's go talk to this NPC. Switch 60 is now set to on. Now if we open up our town map, whoa, what do you know? Look at this. And when we mouse over it, or when we scroll over it rather, it says Test Island. And it's like I said before, the sprite itself is top left aligned. So right here is the top left corner of our graphic, and that's tile 2016. And then 2117 is where our test island is, because that's in the center of the graphic. Right on. I think this is looking pretty good. Test Island. All we need to be able to do now is fly to that later, but we don't have a place to fly to just yet. But yeah, this is an easy way to start setting up hidden regions on the map. It'd be pretty fun if there was a fan game out there where you explored the map and filled out more data on your exploration. Like you filled out the routes and filled out the towns and stuff, like you're a cartographer filling out the map. I think that'd be a fun gimmick. And that does it for this tutorial on region maps. I hope you feel more comfortable setting up region maps for your game, as well as plugging in map information data and setting up fly spots. Thank you so much for watching. If you learned something from this tutorial, please remember to like and subscribe. To access my tutorial website, please check the link in the video description. As a reminder, this tutorial video is for Pokémon Essentials version 21.1, so in the future, it's possible that the layout of some things could be changed. In general though, this series should get you to where you need to go when it comes to making your own Pokémon fan game. Thank you so much for watching, I hope you learned something, and I hope you have a good one. Best of luck to you in your Pokémon fan game endeavors. Bye now!